Welcome into our overtime segment here at SportsSource.tv. We appreciate you joining us. Joined by Mike Griffith, Josh Ward, Jimmy Himes, Bob Hodge right here. This segment brought to you by, have I got it right? Yes, I do. Blue Smoke Cigar and Smokin' Joe's. Smokin' Joe's is their location down in Alcoa. Really nice store, walk-in humidor, very nice. And then their latest venture is Blue Smoke Cigar, which is out South Peters Road. It's between South Peters Road and Rafferty's. You can find it right there, big sign, Blue Smoke Cigar. If you enjoy cigars, this is a cigar lounge. It's a great place to go. They've got meeting rooms, they've got card tables, they've got golf simulators, they've got 1,000 TVs. That's an exaggeration, but they got a bunch. They got the leather seating. Nice place to go relax. It's a gentleman's club, although gentlewomen are also welcome. Blue Smoke Cigars. All right. Didn't get a chance today in the show to talk about a Vol legend player. Bill Anderson played in the 50s on some very good Tennessee teams. Then went on, played on the legendary Vince Lombardi Packer teams. Most remembered around here, though, because people grew up his 30-year run with John Ward as the color analyst on the Vol Network. Now, Ward has always said that Tennessee was the first in the nation to have a former player in that role. I'll trust John Ward. I don't know. That seems hard to believe that they would have been the first, but if he was, then Bill Anderson was also the first former player to take over as a radio color guy. We didn't get a chance to talk about the show, so I want to talk a little bit here, kind of a two-tiered discussion. First one, going to be you and me, because we grew up here in their heyday as fans. You lived and died with them. I mean, Bill Anderson was part of the family. Because you counted on those guys, different than you do now.
10, 11 games a year. When I first got into the media, Tennessee in the Media Guide listed the Vols on television.
You're right.
And when I first got into the media back in the 80s, it was still a short enough list that it didn't even take up 2 full pages. So if you kept up with Tennessee football, you did it via radio.
Yep.
And I can remember being kids, and we would go out, 10, 12 years old. We're playing pickup football games on Saturday afternoon, not sitting around the house. But we had the best radio that we had over on the sidelines playing the Tennessee game. And as soon as somebody caught something interesting or good happening, the game ended or
your game would be temporary. Yeah.
You go over there, you listen, you go back. And John Ward and Bill Anderson were just the way that you followed Tennessee football at that time. And there was no other choices.
Right.
And it helped that they were good. I mean, they were fantastic at what they did.
And everybody thinks their guys are good, but they really were good.
But they really were good. And they were there for so long. My first memories of Tennessee football probably come from sometime around 1968, 1969. That's when I started listening to the games. So it was those two. And so I'm well into my adulthood. I'm married and I have kids, and I'm still listening to those two guys. And so it's an era that's gone.
And that's what I want to talk about in a second, but I had the same memories when I moved from East Tennessee and from Middlesbrough, Kentucky. When I was a boy, moved to Charlotte, North Carolina. There was no internet. Every game wasn't on television, and we didn't have a Vol Network station in Charlotte. It was like living on the North Pole. I think my grandparents would mail the News Sentinel to us over there the day after the ball games. So you could sit there when it would finally arrive on Monday and thumb through everything. And so when we moved back to town, back to East Tennessee, and you could listen to John and Bill if you weren't at the game.
Yeah.
It was special. It was special, and I think they came along at the end of the golden age of the radio play-by-play guys. And that's no knock on what Bob Kessling and Tim Priest are doing. That's no knock on what any guys are doing at any schools across the country. It's the landscape has shifted. Now, I can watch most of the games on my phone if I want. There are 6 million highlight shows. When I was in Charlotte as a boy, there was no, you might get a couple of highlights, but if the games weren't on TV, you don't have highlights for them on ESPN. So that has changed it. And I don't know that you'll ever get that connection. And I know people love their NBA or NFL or college play-by-play guy. But it's just not to that, oh my God, I need you, as it was.
A phrase you don't hear anymore is, well, I turned the sound down on my TV and I turned the radio up. People did. I used to do that. Why? Because every weekend during football season, I listen to John Ward and Bill Anderson. Okay, I don't want to take this game off and listen to whoever from whatever station it was going to be on. And so you did turn the TV down, and you hoped it matched up as close as it possibly could as far as the timeline's concerned. But you did have an attachment there, because it was probably, for me, 10-game season, 8
that you listen to
that you could not find anywhere else. And maybe 9.
Oh, well, before I get to you, I remember, this is a perfect example of how you remember those radio calls. The Vol Network tweeted out a 7 or 8 minute package of the 10 greatest Ward Anderson calls. I knew every one of them before it gets to the point where you can identify. It's not 1st and 5 at the Hurricane 7. I mean, it wasn't a tip-off. The one that was most clear, because I remember I was freshman in college, and I'm listening to the game. Sterling Hinton on his birthday was the quarterback, but I'm listening to Ward and Anderson talk about, and the players are running to the corner of the end zone. I'm like, 89 UCLA game. That's the 24-6 win at the Rose Bowl. You hear Ward and Anderson, and it's like, oh, I'm right back there, because that game wasn't on television. You had to listen to it. Guys, do you think those days, do you agree with us that those days are just gone, or do you think that they might come back at some point?
Well, I think they're gone, and I don't think they'll come back because of all the things you've talked about. There are still a very few people that have 40-year tenures at their school. There's a guy at Texas A&M that's been there a long time, and I'm sure that there's a great relationship between him and the fan base. But the guys that have come along in the last 10 to 15 years that have taken over those jobs, there's not that same rapport. There's not that same relationship. There's not that same camaraderie that you would feel between the announcer and the fans, because, as you said, you can watch all these games. So you still have a few of them out there that are icons at schools, but very few.
Well, there was a time, and granted, these guys had all been there for years and years and years, but it was also, they were the outlet. They were the connection, the same way John Ward was. If you said Georgia, Larry Munson. So Mississippi State, Jack Crystal.
Right.
Say Kentucky, Kaywood Ledford. If you asked me today who's the play-by-play guy at Mississippi State, couldn't tell you. Georgia, couldn't tell you. I know the guy at Kentucky, so I could tell you that. But the dynamic has just changed. Josh, Mike, your thoughts on?
Fans don't lean on the broadcast on the radio anymore, at least as much as they did. There's going to be a time where they do.
And we hope they still listen on radio.
Yeah, sure. Hey, talk radio for
Yeah,
sure.
started to say, you're getting some calls here. Jeff Jarnigan.
That's right. 99.1 AM 99. But you just, think about it, if you live out of town, you have the SEC network, so you can be in California and just say, well, either at my house or I'll go to the sports bar, that you can find it very easily. Now, really, I think if a radio call is discovered and it spreads and you remember it, it's because it's after the fact and it goes viral.
Yes.
And it gets shared on
It's
social
on a
media.
YouTube highlight.
So, and that's still great. That's a lot of fun. But that's where it probably gains popularity as much as anything.
The closest thing left is baseball, because not all baseball games can be televised. People obviously can't watch all the baseball games. And right here in Knoxville, we have John Wilkerson, and it's always fun for me to turn on John Wilkerson calling a game, because I can never tell the score, because his voice is the same. It's always positive and upbeat, and that'll do it for the inning, and the Vols are down 10-1. The top of the order is coming up, and I go, John, you've done it again, and I can never tell. And to me, he's the signature voice right now that most people closely associate. I think Bob Kessling does a great job, but as you said, there's so many options out there that it's harder to be identified with the program in football.
Well, and here's another option we haven't talked about so far. There's games where, okay, I can't be there at the start of the game. I can't get there till late. Now you got the technology just to push a button, and as long as I'm not talking to you or friends are calling me, you can start the game anytime. There was a time, even when the games were on TV, okay, I've got to listen to it on the radio or I'm going to miss the first half. I don't want to do that. So every technological innovation has pushed this stuff a little bit farther down the line.
Same goes for, it's a little different, but coaches shows. Again, you go back to that 1989 game with UCLA that I remember. It's not on television here. I have to listen to it late nights. It started late out there, so it was really late here. You get up early the next morning to watch the coaches show. Because, again, you didn't have 46 sports stations to watch highlights. You didn't have it coming through your phone. Now that has changed, too. The coaches shows have all just become a big recruiting tool. They don't really go through the game as much as they used to. So technology has changed a lot of the ways that people grew up when we were growing up. I mean, it was like, you need radio a lot. You have to watch those coaches shows.
I'm probably the only one here that watched a lot of the Bill Battle show. And you had John Ward, once again, was there sitting beside Bill Battle. So it all kind of, once again, pushed you towards this.
Interesting note. Let's go to a wide shot. Where I'm looking, where you are, you're the camera, that's where they used to do the Johnny Major show here when it was at ABC and WATE6. That's part of the studio. The desk was right there. So that's all that history. If you ever go back online, we talked about it after the Florida game, that we wanted to have a party because I remember Johnny Majors in '79 bringing a shillelagh out on the desk and banging it and surprising John Ward during the coaches show after a win over Notre Dame. It's right there. That's where it took place. But I think Major League Baseball guys are different too. I think that's, as you say, you listen to those guys, that's a little different. But one thing that's also changed that we were talking about inside the break here, I think one reason you're not going to have the legendary guys and the love for these guys is, again, due to social media. Because Brent Musburger was a legend. How many things went viral with Brent Musburger? How many times did people go on Twitter and say, see where he said this? You didn't have that for Vin Scully's career. If you'd had that during Vin Scully's whole career, you think he never botched anything? You think he never stumbled? Got tongue-tied? Lindsey Nelson? But nobody remembered those. You remember the good things. Social media has made it to where something like that goes viral, everybody remembers that. What do you think of Brent? I flipped by their Vegas radio station. He's doing a Vegas thing now with his son. And I flipped by on Sirius XM and wanted to see what it sounded like. And as soon as I heard him, I got a smile because I grew up with Brent Musburger. I like Brent Musburger. But I just thought, and how many people were thrilled when he was gone? Vern Lundquist. How many people have made fun of Vern Lundquist? Thank God he's gone. I like Vern Lundquist. I grew up listening to Vern Lundquist. But those guys, I think that has changed too.
Yeah, my response with Vern Lundquist was, and Brad Nessler's replacing him on CBS. I think Brad's terrific, but my response was still was, well, first couple of weeks, it's not going to be the same when things open up, and Vern's there to bring in the broadcast and set the stage for the SEC. It's just not going to be the same, but it was very easy to find people on social media making fun of Vern, who's an all-time legend in the industry.
And I'll tell you what, guys, I'm maybe a little cheesy here, but I'm going to miss Chris Berman. I had my Chris Berman moment yesterday with Quay Pikachu, as I called Quay McHugh. And I thought, now where did that come? Well, that's a Chris Berman thing, and we all had fun with that. And maybe it got old for some people, but hearing him have some fun with the names and come up with clever and creative ways to dress up those highlights, that was, to me, groundbreaking what ESPN did. And now everybody does it, but I like the guy. I know that he might have been a little difficult to work with, of course, again, because of social media and a couple of YouTube clips.
You never would have seen the website I'm With Leather, which was about taken from a Chris Berman story. You wouldn't have seen the viral video of him losing his mind at halftime. Those types of things. I just think that when you look at the Ward and the Anderson and guys of that age, they were beloved for a few reasons. One, you needed them. It wasn't a luxury. You needed them. It was a necessity. Two, no one could sit there and shoot holes in them all day and all night. Now, you may have some goon that didn't like them and thought something they said was funny, and they go to the barber shop and they say it, and there's 10 guys, and then everybody goes about their lives. It's not floating in cyberspace for people to find 20 years from now. So to me, that's what's changed.
Well, it's interesting. I think the last time that I had to listen to a Tennessee game on the radio, had no choice, I was at Reelfoot Lake, and it was the Tennessee-Arkansas game, the famous Clint Sterner fumble. And I can remember when Tennessee didn't score, went for it on fourth down, gave the ball up, turning the radio off, sitting in the dark, and hating every minute of it. Well, finally, the guys I was hunting with, they got back, we turned on the radio, and John Ward's last words for the broadcast were, and 108,000 Tennessee fans loved every minute of it. He didn't say they won, but you don't say that after you lost, but he didn't say they won. And it was the way he said it, the way you're used to it. Now, somebody would have gotten angry these days and said, well, why didn't he tell you what the score was there at the end of it? Because he painted a much better picture than just the score. And it was hours before I could find out exactly what had happened, and it made it interesting. But the point was, you got so used to these two guys. And that's what made it, for me so different was, and I said it earlier, they went from my youth well into my adulthood. Nobody does that kind of thing anymore in any business.
Hard to survive.
It's hard to, exactly, it is hard to survive. And people getting, the Brent Musburger stuff, me and Jimmy were talking about it before the show. Yeah, you get some of this stuff. Chris Berman, it gets a little old. It gets a little tiresome after a while, but that doesn't make these guys bad. And that's where people, I think, get off track is, oh, I'm tired of that. Okay, but it doesn't make them bad. Add me into the Miss Vern Lundquist crowd this summer. This
Yeah,
fall.
I just think there's a lot. You just don't have the connection with these guys that you used to, and that's through no fault. It's not who you've hired at UT or any of these other schools. It's just a different day and age. You can cut these guys down easier, put it out there for everybody to hear and spread it, and you also have a million ways to consume the game information.
Our expectations of consumption have just completely changed. I mean, I'm guilty of it. If a video on my phone buffers for 5 seconds, I lose my mind. I might even exit out and not watch just because I had to wait 5 to 10 seconds
I
to
did
watch
that this
something.
morning.
Yeah, that's
Same thing.
really it's a technological miracle that I can watch some of these
Yeah, but-
videos on my cell phone.
But you don't have 5 seconds to
Right,
waste.
right.
I know.
Yeah.
That's how different it was. And that's another shift. Now, we're doing 15 things at once. When it was Tennessee on the radio, that UCLA, I keep going back to that game just as an example. Sat on my bed, twiddling my thumbs, listening to the game. I wasn't sitting there also scrolling through my phone.
Or playing somebody in a video game that's in China.
That's right. No, I was there listening to that game, and I don't know that people can do that anymore.
Well, and
let's
also
just
just
sit
a-
down and do nothing
a
and listen.
generational thing. I'd say that my 24-year-old son has never listened to an entire football game on the radio because he hadn't had to.
Right. Don't
He
have to.
just has not had to do that.
Well, if he does start, he can listen to 99.1.
Yes.
AM.
We'll end it with a plug.
Yeah.
Don't forget to download the app as well.
Well, if you want to check out SECCountry.com as you're watching the game, we'll have a lot of
Oh God. And you're launching a new web. Go ahead. What's your new website going to be?
BobHodgeOutdoors.com, coming soon to a computer near you.
Which means
or a
I
phone.
Which means I have to say we'll see you right back here next Sunday at 11 on WATE 6 for the Sports Source. Thank you for being with us, and our thoughts and prayers go out to the family of Bill Anderson.